What if I told you the most powerful weapon in the Cold War wasn't a missile? It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't even a satellite. It was a human mind. And the CIA spent millions of dollars trying to weaponize it. Let that sink in. In 1995, the CIA declassified thousands of pages of top-secret documents. Pages that had been buried for decades. Pages that revealed something so bizarre, so impossible, that most people still don't believe it happened. The US government trained psychic spies, real people who claimed they could see across continents, read minds, and predict the future, all from a padded room in Maryland. Sounds like science fiction, right? That's what they wanted you to think. But the documents don't lie. The receipts are there. And today, we're going deep into the files they tried to forget. The year was 1972. Richard Nixon was in the White House. The Vietnam War was tearing the country apart. And somewhere in a CIA basement, a group of scientists were staring at a man named Ingo Swann. Swann wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a spy in the traditional sense. He was an artist, a painter, and he claimed he could leave his body and travel to places he'd never been. The CIA didn't believe him, so they tested him. They locked him in a room, gave him coordinates he'd never seen, and told him to describe what was there. Just numbers on a page. Nothing else. No photos, no maps, no hints. Swann closed his eyes, and then he started talking. He described a cluster of buildings, a windmill, a road shaped like a question mark. He described colors, textures, even the smell of the air. The CIA agents in the room exchanged glances, because those coordinates, they led to a secret Soviet weapons research facility, a place so classified that even most of the US military didn't know it existed. And Swann had never left his chair. Here's where it gets wild. They didn't just do this once, they did it hundreds of times. The program had a name. Stargate. No, not the movie. The real thing. A $20 million operation that ran for over 2 decades. And Ingo Swann wasn't alone. The CIA recruited soldiers, housewives, psychics, even convicted criminals. Anyone who showed even a flicker of ability. They called it remote viewing. The ability to see events, objects, and locations without using your physical senses. Think about that for a second. The same government that told you UFOs weren't real. The same government that denied Area 51 existed for 50 years. That government was secretly paying people to bend spoons with their minds and spy on the Kremlin, using nothing but meditation and a notepad. Why? Because it worked. At least sometimes it did. Let me give you the case that made even the skeptics sweat. In 1979, a remote viewer named Joseph McMoneagle was given a target, just coordinates, 35 degrees north, 139 degrees east. He sat in his little room at Fort Meade, Maryland, put on headphones playing Pink Noise, and let his mind drift. Within minutes, he started describing something massive, metallic, cylindrical. He said it was partially submerged in water, surrounded by cranes and scaffolding. He said it felt wrong, like a tragedy had happened there. He sketched what he saw, a huge structure tilted at an angle, with people scrambling around it in panic. The CIA didn't know what to make of it. The coordinates were in the middle of the Soviet Union, near a naval base, but nothing in their satellite images matched McMonagle's description. So they filed it away, forgot about it, another weird note in a folder full of weird notes, until 6 months later. A Soviet submarine, the K-129, suffered a catastrophic accident. It sank in the Pacific Ocean, taking 98 sailors with it. The CIA only learned about it through intercepted communications. But here's the thing, the K-129 wasn't where McMoneagle said it was thousands of miles away. Another failure for the psychic spies. But wait, remember those coordinates? 35 north, 139 east? That wasn't the submarine's location. That was the Soviet naval base, where the K-129 had been repaired just weeks before its final mission. McMoneagle hadn't seen the sinking. He'd seen where the submarine had been. He'd seen its past, and he described the panic, the chaos, the feeling of something going terribly wrong, all before anyone in the West knew the sub even existed. Coincidence? Maybe. But how many coincidences does it take before you start asking different questions? The documents reveal case after case like this. A remote viewer describing a new class of Soviet bomber before spy satellites confirmed it. Another locating a kidnapped US general in Italy. One even claimed to have seen inside a Chinese nuclear facility so accurately, the engineers verified the layout. These aren't stories from conspiracy blogs. These are in the CIA's own files, stamped, dated, signed. So why don't we know more? Why isn't this taught in history classes? Because in 1995, the CIA shut it all down. They said Stargate was a failure, a waste of taxpayer money. They released 89,000 pages of documents and told the world, nothing to see here, move along. But here's what they didn't tell you. Those 89,000 pages, they were heavily redacted. Black bars covering names, locations, results. And the program's real budget, still classified. We know about the $20 million that went through official channels. But insiders have suggested the real number could be 10 times higher, maybe more. Because Stargate wasn't the only program. It was just the only one they admitted to. There was Scanate, there was Grillflame, there was Sunstreak. Different names, same mission. Find out if the human mind could be the ultimate intelligence asset. And here's the kicker. The Soviets were doing the exact same thing. The KGB had its own psychic research division. They called it psychotronics. They spent even more money than the CIA, because both sides had come to the same terrifying realization. If even 1% of this was real, it changed everything. Warfare, espionage, the balance of power, everything. Imagine you're a general in the 1980s. You have satellites that can read license plates from space. You have intercepts that capture every radio signal on Earth. But a psychic spy? They don't need technology. They don't leave footprints. They don't show up on radar. They just close their eyes and know. How do you defend against that? How do you even detect it? You can't. That's the point. Now I know what you're thinking. If this was so powerful, why did they cancel it? Why shut down the perfect spy? And that's the million-dollar question. The official answer is simple: inconsistent results. Sometimes the viewers were stunningly accurate, other times they were completely wrong. The CIA couldn't figure out why. They couldn't control it, and in the world of intelligence, if you can't control it, you can't trust it. But there's another theory, one whispered by the people who were actually in those rooms. What if they got too close? What if they saw something they weren't supposed to see? Something so big, so terrifying, that shutting down the program was the only option. The documents are full of strange hints, viewers who refused to work on certain targets, sessions that were stopped midway by unnamed supervisors, files marked with codes that don't appear in any other CIA records. One remote viewer, Pat Price, described a secret Soviet facility in excruciating detail. Then he died. Officially, a heart attack. Unofficially, his colleagues had doubts. Serious doubts. Another viewer, Yuri Geller, the guy famous for bending spoons, was tested by the CIA in 1973. They put him in a shielded room, surrounded by metal detectors and radiation counters. They asked him to stop a Geiger counter with his mind. Just think about it. No touching. No tricks. Just focus. The needle moved. The scientists checked the equipment. Ran diagnostics. Everything was working perfectly. But the needle moved again. And again. They never figured out how. Geller went on to work with intelligence agencies around the world. And the CIA? They kept testing him for years. If it was all fake, why bother? Here's what the skeptics miss. The CIA didn't fund Stargate for 23 years because they were bored. They didn't employ dozens of remote viewers because they had money to burn. They did it because they were scared. Scared the Soviets were ahead. Scared of missing the next breakthrough. And maybe deep down scared that the human mind was more powerful than any computer they could build. The declassified documents show something else too. The viewers weren't just spying on enemies. They were looking inward, at Mars, at distant galaxies, at the afterlife. One session, led by Ingo Swann, targeted Jupiter before the Pioneer 10 spacecraft arrived. Swann described a ring around the planet. At the time, no one knew Jupiter had rings. Pioneer 10 confirmed it a year later. Another viewer targeted a spot on Mars, described massive structures, pyramids, evidence of ancient civilization. The CIA labeled it unverifiable, but in 1996, NASA announced they had found evidence of fossilized microbial life in a Martian meteorite. Was it connected? Probably not. But in the world of Stargate, coincidence has a funny way of piling up. So where are we now? The program is dead, officially. The viewers have scattered. Some wrote books, some disappeared. The documents sit in archives, waiting for someone curious enough to read between the black bars. And the question remains, did it work? Here's my take, not based on belief, based on the evidence they couldn't hide. Remote viewing wasn't consistent enough to replace satellites. It wasn't reliable enough to brief a president. But in those moments when it worked, really worked, it produced information that shouldn't have been possible. Information that was verified. Information that saved lives, located weapons, and pierced the Iron Curtain in ways technology couldn't. The CIA didn't lose the documents. They released them strategically. Buried in 89,000 pages of noise, dismissed by a press conference that called it a failure. But the truth is in there, you just have to know where to look. And maybe that's the real lesson. The government didn't just study psychic powers, they weaponized secrecy itself. They took something extraordinary, wrapped it in bureaucracy, and made it boring. The oldest trick in the book: hide the truth in plain sight, and dare people to believe it. So here's my challenge to you. Go read the documents yourself. They're public. Free, online right now. Search for Stargate Remote Viewing CIA. Look at the sketches, read the session transcripts. Then ask yourself, if this was all fake, why are there still sections blacked out in 2024? What could possibly need hiding in a failed program from 30 years ago? The answer might change how you see the world, or it might just be another coincidence. But in a universe where the CIA spent decades and millions trying to turn psychics into spies, I'm not sure I believe in coincidence anymore.